You know, when I first spotted the human male named Marcus walking through our marketplace on Velthara Prime, I thought he was just another lost tourist. Big mistake on my part. Really. The guy was stumbling around like a newborn Glixnor trying to find its mother, bumping into floating vendors and apologizing in that weird earth language of his. Sorry, he kept saying, waving his hands around like some demented wind dancer. The vendors were giving him looks that could melt Durasteel. But Marcus? Oh, Marcus just kept smiling that dopey human smile. I should have walked away right then. Should have let Princess Lyara handle her own diplomatic mess. But no. Here I was, Corvin of the Ninth House, watching this disaster unfold from my perch atop the crystal tower. My 4 eyes tracked his movement as he somehow managed to knock over a cart of fermented glowfruits. The explosion of purple juice painted half the street, and the vendors started shrieking in 3 different dialects. By the 7 moons, I muttered, my tentacles twitching with amusement. This creature is going to start an intergalactic incident before lunch. That's when Princess Lyara appeared, gliding through the crowd like liquid starlight. She wore her human disguise mask, of course. Perfect pale skin, those tiny round eyes humans seem to favor, and that ridiculous mop of yellow hair they call blonde. The sight of her in that form always made my stomach churn. Not because she looked bad, mind you, but because I knew what lay beneath. The real Lyara. The one with silver-scaled skin that shifted colors with her emotions. 6 graceful arms that moved like flowing water, and those magnificent compound eyes that could see across 17 different light spectrums. The Lyara that the human would run screaming from, if he ever saw her true form. Excuse me, she said to Marcus in that carefully practiced Earth accent. Are you all right? Marcus looked up from where he'd been trying to help the vendor clean up the purple mess. His face went through about 12 different expressions in 2 seconds flat. Confusion, embarrassment, attraction, more confusion. Humans, I swear, their emotions play across their faces like neon signs. I'm fine, he stammered, straightening up. Just making friends everywhere I go, apparently. Lyara laughed, and even through the vocal modulators in her mask, that musical sound made my heart skip. The vendor, still muttering curses that would make a Korthak pirate blush, stomped away to find a cleaning drone. You're not from around here, Lyara observed, tilting her head in that way humans do when they're trying to be charming. That obvious, huh? Marcus rubbed the back of his neck, leaving a purple stain from the fruit juice. I'm Marcus Johnson. Earth Diplomatic Corps. Well, junior member. Very junior. Like so junior I'm basically an intern with a fancy title. And there it was. The moment that changed everything. Not some grand romantic gesture or epic declaration of love. Just a human idiot covered in alien fruit juice, talking to a princess in disguise, neither of them knowing they were about to turn the galaxy upside down. I should mention here that Princess Lyara wasn't supposed to be talking to any humans. At all. Ever. The Galactic Council had very specific rules about that. Humans were still in their probationary period, you see, barely past the don't nuke yourselves into extinction phase of development. They'd only made first contact 5 years ago, and most of the galaxy still thought of them as amusing pets at best. But Lyara had always been curious. Even as a youngling, she'd sneak out of the palace to explore the lower levels of the city. She'd study alien cultures when she should have been learning proper royal protocol. And now, apparently, she was fascinated by the newest species to join the galactic community. Would you like me to show you around? She asked Marcus. I know this place pretty well. Marcus's face lit up like a solar flare. Really? That would be amazing. I mean, if you're sure. I don't want to impose or anything. I'm supposed to be learning about Veltharan culture for the diplomatic mission. But honestly, I've been lost since I got off the transport. It's no trouble at all, Lyara said, and I could hear the genuine warmth in her voice. Dangerous. Very dangerous. They started walking together through the marketplace, Lyara pointing out various stalls and explaining the customs. Marcus listened with the intensity of a student taking his final exams, asking questions that actually showed some intelligence beneath that bumbling exterior. So the vendors display their goods in those floating spheres because it shows they trust their customers not to steal. Marcus asked, watching a jeweler arrange glowing stones in mid-air. Exactly. It's a sign of mutual respect, touch without permission, and you'll find yourself banned from every marketplace on the planet. Good to know. I was wondering why everyone looked ready to vaporize me when I accidentally bumped into that fruit display. That and you covered half the street in fermented oxyloberry juice. That stuff is used in religious ceremonies. You essentially created a very expensive holy mess. Marcus stopped walking and stared at her. Oh no. Oh, this is bad. I need to apologize. Is there some sort of protocol? A ceremony I need to perform? Should I sacrifice something? Please tell me I don't need to sacrifice something. Lyara burst out laughing. A sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. No sacrifices required. Though you might want to send the vendor a formal apology and offer to pay for the cleaning. Consider it done. Wow, interspecies diplomacy is harder than they made it sound in training. You had training for this. 6 whole weeks of it. I'm practically an expert. Marcus's voice dripped with sarcasm. They taught us how to say hello in 43 different languages, and how not to accidentally declare war by using the wrong hand gesture. Very comprehensive. They continued through the market, and I found myself following at a discreet distance. Not because I was worried about Lyara's safety, mind you. She could handle herself better than most of the royal guard. No, I was curious about this human who had somehow captured the princess's attention. Marcus was different from the other humans I'd observed. Less rigid, more adaptable. When a Vorthan child ran up to him chattering in rapid clicks and whistles, he didn't recoil or look disgusted. Instead, he crouched down to the child's level and attempted to respond in the same clicking language. His pronunciation was terrible, but the effort made the child giggle and run back to its parent. You speak Vorthan? Lyara asked, impressed. I speak terrible Vorthan. I think I just asked the kid if his grandmother was a particularly ugly fish. Close. You asked if his grandmother liked to swim with the ugly fish. Even better. They spent the rest of the afternoon exploring the market, then moved on to the cultural district. Lyara showed him the Museum of Galactic History, the Harmony Gardens, where representatives from different worlds had planted native flora, and the viewing platform that offered a spectacular view of the 3 moons rising over the capital city. As the day wore on, I noticed something that made my scales tingle with alarm. Lyara was relaxing. Her carefully maintained human posture was becoming more natural, more graceful. The movements that came so easily to her 6-armed form were starting to show through her 2-armed disguise, and Marcus was noticing. You move like a dancer, he commented, as they watched the sunset from the platform. Very fluid, graceful. Lyara tensed, and I saw a flicker of silver pass across her artificial skin as her emotional regulators struggled to keep up. I studied movement arts as a child. It shows. On Earth we'd say you move like water. Is that a compliment? Definitely a compliment. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the sky shift from gold to deep purple as the first stars appeared. It was almost peaceful. Romantic even, which made what happened next so much worse. The attack came out of nowhere. One moment they were standing side by side enjoying the view. The next, energy bolts were screaming through the air and Marcus was diving to tackle Lyara to the ground. Stay down, he shouted, covering her body with his own as chunks of the platform exploded around them. I was already moving, dropping from my observation post to engage the attackers, 5 figures in dark combat suits, faces hidden behind reflective masks. Professional assassins, by the look of their equipment and coordination. But who were they after? The princess? The human? Both? Marcus rolled Lyara behind a decorative barrier and somehow produced a small energy pistol from his jacket. Can you contact security? He called over the sound of weapons fire. Already done, Lyara replied, though I noticed her voice had lost its human accent and taken on the harmonic undertones of her true species. If Marcus noticed, he didn't comment. Good. Now stay behind cover while you what? Get yourself killed being heroic. I was going to say create a distraction, but your version sounds more dramatic. Even under fire they were bantering. Either these two were completely insane, or they were perfect for each other. I reached the platform just as one of the assassins flanked around the barrier where Marcus and Lyara were hiding. My plasma rifle took him down before he could get a clear shot, but his scream of pain alerted the others to my presence. "Corvin," Lyara called out. "Thank the ancestors you're here." Marcus spun around to look at me, and I saw his face go through that same series of expressions I'd observed earlier, except this time, confusion and shock were the dominant themes. You see, I hadn't bothered with a disguise. 8 feet tall, covered in scales that shifted from green to blue depending on the light, 4 arms, 4 eyes, and a face that belonged in human nightmares. I was what I was, and I'd never seen the point in hiding it. "Princess, we need to move," I called back, taking aim at another assassin. "This position isn't defensible." "Princess." Marcus turned to stare at Lyara, his weapon lowering slightly. "Did he just call you princess?" Liara's artificial face went pale, then flushed red. The emotional regulators in her mask were clearly overloading. "I can explain later," I growled, laying down covering fire as the remaining assassins advanced. "Right now, we run." We made it off the platform and into the narrow streets of the old city before the assassins could regroup. But as we crouched in an abandoned shop, catching our breath and checking for injuries, Marcus kept staring at Lyara with that look humans get when they're trying to solve a puzzle. "So," he said finally, his voice carefully neutral, "Princess." "Huh." Lyara sighed, a sound that came out as more of a harmonic whistle than a human breath. Another slip in her disguise. "It's complicated." "I bet it is." Marcus looked at me, then back at Lyara, "and I'm guessing the whole "I know this place pretty well" thing makes a lot more sense now. "Marcus, I know it's okay. I mean, it's not okay that people just tried to kill us, but the princess thing, I get it, sort of. You couldn't exactly introduce yourself as royalty to some random human diplomat, right?" The way he said it, so matter of fact and understanding, made me reassess the human entirely. Maybe there was more to Marcus Johnson than I'd initially thought. "We should keep moving," I said, checking the scanner on my rifle. "More hostiles incoming. At least 12, probably more." 12. Marcus looked incredulous. "Who did we piss off?" "That," Lyara said, her voice heavy with implications, "is a very good question." 3 hours later, we were holed up in an abandoned mining facility on the outskirts of the city, and I was beginning to think that maybe, just maybe, we were completely screwed. The good news? We'd managed to lose our pursuers in the underground tunnel system. The bad news? Liara's disguise was failing spectacularly, and Marcus was about to get the shock of his very short human life. "The power cells in my holographic projectors are dying," Lyara announced, her voice now fully carrying those harmonic undertones that made my species sound like living music. "I've got maybe an hour before complete system failure." Marcus looked up from where he'd been trying to patch a cut on his arm with a piece of torn fabric. "Holographic projectors. Oh, this was going to be good." I settled back against a support beam, all 4 of my eyes focused on the impending disaster. Sometimes being an observer had its perks. "Marcus," Lyara began, her artificial face flickering like a bad video feed. "There's something I need to tell you. Let me guess. You're not actually human." The silence that followed was so profound I could hear the facility's automated systems humming 3 levels below us. Liara's disguise flickered again, and for just a moment, Marcus caught a glimpse of silver scales beneath the failing hologram. "How long have you known?" she asked quietly. Marcus laughed, but it wasn't the nervous laughter from earlier. This was the sound of someone who'd been putting puzzle pieces together all day. "The way you move, for starters. No human moves that gracefully. Then there was how you knew exactly which vendors to avoid, which customs to observe, where all the best viewing spots were. You didn't know this place well because you studied it. You knew it because you lived here. And you're okay with this." "Define okay." Marcus stood up and started pacing, which in the small space mostly involved him turning in circles. "Am I okay with finding out that the most interesting person I've met in years isn't actually my species? Yeah, I think I am. Am I okay with people trying to kill us? Less so." Liara's disguise gave another violent flicker, and this time Marcus got a clear view of her true face. The compound eyes, the elegant bone structure, the way her features shifted subtly in the light. He stopped pacing and stared. "Wow," he said softly. "You're beautiful." I nearly fell off my perch. In all my years serving the royal family, I'd never heard anyone react to a Veltharan's true form with anything approaching wonder. Usually it was screaming, running, or both. "You can't mean that," Lyara whispered, her voice carrying harmonics of disbelief and hope. "Why not?" "Because you're different. Because you don't look human." Marcus stepped closer, seemingly unbothered by the fact that her silver scales were now visible through the failing hologram. "News flash, Princess. I'm about as far from home as it's possible to get. Surrounded by technology I don't understand. In the middle of what appears to be an assassination plot. Different is pretty much my entire reality right now." The holographic projectors chose that moment to give up entirely. The human disguise vanished like smoke, revealing Princess Lyara in all her alien glory. 6 arms, silver skin that shifted from pale moonlight to deep ocean blue as her emotions fluctuated, and those magnificent compound eyes that caught and reflected light like living prisms. Marcus stared for a long moment, taking in every detail. Then he smiled that same dopey smile from the marketplace. "Much better. The human look was nice, but this is you, isn't it?" "This is me," Lyara confirmed, her voice now free of artificial constraints. She sounded like wind through crystal caves, musical and ethereal. "Are you frightened?" "Should I be? Most species find us unsettling. Most species probably haven't spent the afternoon being shot at with you." Kind of puts things in perspective. That's when the explosions started again. "Really?" I growled, checking my weapon's charge. "Can't we have 5 minutes of emotional revelation without someone trying to kill us?" The mining facility shook as something big hit the main entrance. Emergency lighting flickered on, bathing everything in red that made Lyara's scales look like flowing metal. "They found us," Marcus said, stating the obvious with admirable calm. "Brilliant deduction," I replied, moving to a defensive position. "Any other insights?" "Well, they're either really persistent bounty hunters, or someone really wants the princess dead." Lyara's scales shifted to a deep, angry red. "Or they want to prevent an alliance between my people and Earth." That stopped both Marcus and me cold. "What alliance?" Marcus asked. "The one my father has been secretly negotiating with your government for the past 6 months. The one that would give humanity access to our technology and star charts. The one that certain factions in the Galactic Council would kill to prevent." "Ah," Marcus said. "That would explain the professional assassins." Another explosion. Closer this time. Dust rained from the ceiling, and the facility's automated defense systems finally activated. Energy barriers slammed into place across the entrances, but they wouldn't hold for long against military-grade weapons. "We need to move," I said. "There's an old transport tunnel that leads to the spaceport. If we can reach it, we can escape and let the bad guys destroy any evidence that the princess was ever here." Marcus finished, leaving the alliance talks to continue in secret. "Exactly. There's just one problem with that plan." "What?" Marcus grinned, and for the first time since I'd met him, he looked genuinely dangerous. "I'm really starting to like it here." The main barrier exploded inward, and our attackers poured through the gap. But instead of the 5 assassins from before, we were facing a full military squad, 20 soldiers in advanced combat armor, carrying weapons that could punch through starship hulls. "Oh, come on," I shouted over the sound of energy weapons charging. "This is just showing off." Marcus had somehow produced a much larger weapon from his diplomatic bag, which made me wonder exactly what kind of diplomat he actually was. "Lyara, can you contact your father's forces?" "Communication is being jammed," she replied, her 6 arms moving in complex patterns as she worked on some kind of technical device. "But I might be able to punch through if I can boost the signal." "Do it. Corvin and I will hold them off." "We will?" I asked, then shook my head. "Humans. Absolutely insane." "Right. We will." The battle that followed was the kind of chaos that military historians write entire books about. Energy bolts screamed through the air, turning ancient mining equipment into modern art sculptures. Marcus moved like someone with actual combat training, not like the bumbling diplomat he'd pretended to be. and Lyara worked her technical magic while occasionally contributing to the fight with some kind of sonic weapon that made attackers clutch their heads and stumble. "Marcus," I called during a brief lull in the fighting. "What exactly do you do for the Diplomatic Corps?" "Special operations," he called back, putting 3 precise shots into an attacker's armor. "Diplomatic cover. You're a spy. I prefer cultural exchange specialist with flexible morals." Of course he was a spy. It made perfect sense. Send the charming, seemingly harmless human to make contact with alien cultures. Who would suspect the guy who covered himself in fruit juice and apologized to vendors? Lyara's device suddenly came to life with a burst of harmonic tones. "I've got through. Father's sending the Royal Guard." "How long?" I shouted, ducking as someone tried to remove my head with a plasma rifle. 10 minutes. "We don't have 10 minutes. That's when Marcus did something so typically human, so completely insane, that it actually worked. He stood up in the middle of the firefight, raised his hands, and shouted at the top of his lungs. "Attention assassins. I'd like to surrender." The shooting stopped. Even I stared at him, like he'd lost his mind. "Marcus," Lyara hissed. "What are you doing?" "Trust me," he whispered back. Then raised his voice again. "I'm Marcus Johnson, Earth Diplomatic Corps. I'm willing to surrender in exchange for safe passage for my companions." One of the attackers, presumably the leader, stepped forward. His armor was more elaborate than the others, and when he spoke, his voice carried the electronic distortion of a universal translator. "The human is not our target. Stand aside, and you will not be harmed." "Can't do that," Marcus replied cheerfully. "See, I've gotten kind of attached to my companions, especially the princess there. She's got the most amazing eyes." Lyara's scales flushed a deep purple, which I'd never seen before. I was pretty sure it meant she was either mortified or completely smitten, possibly both. "The princess will come with us," the leader stated. "Her presence complicates certain political arrangements." "Yeah, about that." Marcus's voice took on a harder edge. "Here's the thing about us humans. We're really stubborn when it comes to protecting people we care about. And right now, I care about Princess Lyara quite a lot." "You would die for an alien?" "Buddy, I'm already an alien here. We're all aliens to somebody." The philosophical implications of that statement seemed to confuse the assassin leader for a moment, which was exactly long enough for the Royal Guard to arrive. They came through the ceiling like avenging angels, drop pods smashing through the facility's roof in a shower of metal and stone. 20 of the finest warriors in the Velthara military, armed with weapons that made our attackers' gear look like children's toys. The fight was over in 30 seconds. As the dust settled and the Royal Guard secured the area, Lyara approached Marcus with something approaching reverence. "You would have died for me," she said. "Why?" Marcus considered the question seriously, looking at her true form in the red emergency lighting. The way her scales caught and reflected the light, how her 6 arms moved in unconscious harmony, the depth and complexity of her compound eyes. "Because," he said finally, "in the past 24 hours, you've shown me wonders I never imagined existed. You've made me laugh, made me think, and made me want to be braver than I actually am. And when someone does that for you, their species becomes pretty irrelevant." Lyara stepped closer, her scales shifting to a warm gold color. "Even if I look like this, even if I'm not human, especially because you're not human." Marcus reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and gently touched her cheek. Her scales were warm and smooth, like polished metal in sunlight. "Humanity's great, but we've got a whole galaxy to explore now. I'd rather do it with someone who can show me things I've never dreamed of. And if I asked you to stay here on Velthara Prime, I'd probably ask what the job market is like for reformed spies with diplomatic experience." Lyara laughed, that wind chime sound that had captivated me from the beginning. Then she did something that made my heart skip and probably changed the course of interstellar relations forever. She took off the broken remains of her holographic mask, held it up between them, and said, "Can you still love me like this?" Marcus looked at the mask, then at her true face, then back at the mask. Then he took it from her hands and tossed it aside. "Princess," he said, "I wouldn't have you any other way." And as they kissed, surrounded by the chaos of battle and the promise of a galaxy full of possibilities, I realized that maybe, just maybe, this whole human experiment was going to work out just fine. After all, any species crazy enough to fall in love across the stars was probably crazy enough to help us figure out this whole galactic community thing. The universe just got a lot more interesting.